Hi everyone, I'm Amber. There are a lot of rumors about me at school, and they are not the most pleasant for me. And all because I have the biggest butt. Do you think this is a good thing? Then listen to my story and you will draw your own conclusions. Do not forget to write your opinion in the comments, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Life at school is not easy. There are criteria by which you are evaluated. It's easier for guys. You're either a popular athlete or a quiet loser. But for girls, it's much more complicated. We are judged by character, appearance, even connections. There's a girl in my class. She's the principal's daughter. Everyone avoids her, constantly thinking before talking to her. Yes, maybe they're afraid of her, or they respect her, or they just don't want her to report everything to daddy. Sometimes I envy her because she has a quiet, measured life. I'd like one too, but that's not what I have. You'd be surprised if I told you that I'm popular too, but I'm not one of the 4 local rich people. Nature has given me something very big. The fact is that since birth, I have had a big butt. You will say that there are problems much worse than this. Considering that now many girls work out to try to achieve this, I would like to get rid of it. In general, it all started in childhood. My mother could not find any clothes that fit me because I stupidly couldn't fit into any pants. They got stuck on my buttocks. My mother had to buy pants several sizes larger, sew them at the waist, and shorten the length. She said it was funny, but it wasn't funny to me at all. For this reason, I wore skirts and dresses that there were no problems. I'm not even talking about the underwear that my mother bought for me as a teenager, but sometimes even the skirts didn't save me. My butt bulged out like a sail. I felt like a sheep, which is what they called me at school. The older I got, the more rumors were spread about me. Everyone stared at my butt, turned around to look at me. At those moments, I wanted to sink into the ground. When I was 13, I found a way to deal with this stress. I started eating. I ate everything I could find in the refrigerator at home, ate at school, and ate on the way to school. I especially wanted to eat in public when I was the center of attention. In general, after 2 years, I became even bigger. And all because the calories I ate went exactly where I didn't want them to go. At the age of 15, the school chairs were so small for me that 2 chairs were placed for me as an exception. It was so humiliating, but I couldn't just sit on one. My classmates took photos surreptitiously, distributed them, and discussed them in loud whispers. All I wanted was to be left alone. And only my mother said that this isn't bad, but on the contrary, it's a matter of pride. A woman's curves are very beautiful, she told me, but I didn't think so. A year later, when teenagers reached the peak of the hormonal jump, the guys began to get handsy. They could not pass by me just like that. They always tried to touch or pinch me. Then there were rumors that I had some kind of augmentation surgery, but that's nonsense. Allegedly, they wanted to make sure that it was natural. But no one ever asked me how I felt about it. It was hard carrying a load from behind. After a while, varicose veins appeared on my legs and my mother and I had to treat them. And then I met a guy on the internet. His name was Clay. I didn't post a photo below the waist, and he liked me. He came to my city 2 months later, moved with his family, and came to my school. When I first met him in the hallway, he was so happy, but then he saw my whole body. He slowed down and then said hello, and he couldn't take his eyes off my lower body. Everyone noticed this and started laughing. I couldn't stand it and ran home. I asked my mother to transfer me to another school, but she wouldn't even listen. After all, it was the best school in the city. Then I asked for a reduction operation, but my mother was against me going under the knife. A day later, Clay came up to me again. He apologized 100 times and then offered to take a walk with me. At first, I didn't want to, but he talked me into it. During the walk, I learned that Clay is an amateur photographer. He invited me to participate in a photo session, and before I declined, he showed me some pictures of his work. They were not just normal girls. Some were full, some didn't have a leg, an arm, but they looked just amazing in the pictures. I take these photos so they can see themselves from the outside and understand how beautiful they really are. Just like you. You are more beautiful than any girl I know, and I want you to see it, he told me. And I agreed. We had a photo shoot out in nature. At first, I was embarrassed, but then I relaxed and it gave me confidence. The very next day, the pictures were displayed on his page on social networks. Clay has about 1 million followers, and they were all crazy about my photos. I woke up that day as a celebrity. At school, I was already perceived differently, treated with respect, and from that moment on, I never heard any mockery against me. A few photos changed my life so much. Clay let me know that I was beautiful, much more beautiful than anyone who had ever slandered me. I finally realized this and accepted myself. I was no longer shy about wearing pants. I was no longer shy about my body. I was even proud of it. So, a lot depends on our own perception. And if you doubt yourself, just look from the outside and love yourself. Then the people around you will never dare to offend you again, because you will start to respect and appreciate yourself. Do you agree with my opinion? If so, please write why, and if not, give at least one reason not to love yourself. Hi everyone, my name is Eleanor. People still call me Elia. Elia Tits. Yes, if you don't know, tits are breasts. Nature rewarded me with 2 melons in full. And before you get jealous, tell me how cool and beautiful it is, I'll tell you about the pros and cons of such an award. Well, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write your opinion in the comments. Please support me. So, my whole childhood was like everyone else's. I played, met children, and everything was fine until I was 10 years old. At this stage, girls began the so-called growing up. It was a terrible period because my caring mother would not let me rest. She examined me every day and observed the changes in my body, and I was so uncomfortable, and I really wanted to be left alone, but it didn't happen. My favorite items in my wardrobe were t-shirts and sweatshirts. I just loved wearing them because you could eat as much as you wanted in them and you still couldn't see your stomach. Well, once my mother and I were going to go to some holiday. It was a wedding, I think. My mom bought me a nice white t-shirt with a small net and something else. Mom, what is this? I asked her, and she was like, this is a bra. You are now grown up, and so you need to wear it. You can take them off at night and only walk with it during the day, she said. I picked it up, my first bra in my life, and realized that it was uncomfortable. Rejecting the idea of trying it on, I put on a t-shirt and said I would go like this. My mother did not contradict me. We quickly gathered and went to the event. I went there in a good mood because I just loved to look at the brides. They looked just magical. I sat down at the table and realized that the kid sitting across from me was staring at me. At first, I didn't know where he was looking, but then I looked closer and noticed that he was looking at my breasts. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. Only then did I notice that my chest was sticking out and more, well, you know what. It was a nightmare. I felt ashamed and embarrassed. I went to my mother and told her about the situation. She smiled and said, I brought you something to wear. You have grown breasts and there is nothing wrong with that. A woman without breasts, like without arms, all girls have them. Then the music started playing and I wanted to dance so much. I just loved dancing. But when I went out on the dance floor and made a couple of rhythmic movements, I realized that they were bothering me, and that kid was still staring at me. I immediately sat down at the table and sat hunched over all evening. I didn't want to get up and be looked at all. Of course, the adults didn't see it, but that boy, he really confused me. Running home in the evening, I took a shower and picked up the bra. Somehow I put it on myself and looked in the mirror. My mother came into the room at that moment and said that it fits perfectly. I didn't understand what that means. How can breasts look great at all? My mother said that this device holds the chest when walking and running, and then we are not hurt or uncomfortable. I wore it to school the next day and still didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't want to discuss my body with the girls, but they still saw it when we changed in the locker room. I began to hide it, and then it turned out that 8 of my classmates already wear such things. This calmed me down. And then the nightmare started. My breasts were growing non-stop. After a couple of months, my mother bought me a bra in a bigger size, and then another and another. When I returned to school after the summer holidays, my classmates were totally freaking out. They didn't see me, they saw my breasts. And even the big white t-shirts couldn't hide them. At the first lesson, when I sat down at my desk, I realized that my breasts did not fit there. I sat down closer, but I squeezed them hard. It caused pain, and then I had to put them on the table. You won't believe it, but I closed half of my notebook. I was still sitting on the first desk in front of the teacher, and when the historian came to us, said hello, and sat down in his seat, he just paused for a minute and looked at me. Can you imagine how awkward it was? All the kids in the class noticed his reaction and just started laughing out loud. Their laughter finally distracted the teacher, and he blushed, then asked me to move back. I was ready to sink through the ground. But then something even worse happened. We had gym class. For your information, I'm a pretty good dancer. Yes, it's true. And I have great flexibility. And I was determined to get into a cheerleading group because it offered huge advantages for high school students to go to college. Who doesn't need a scholarship to study? Everyone. But for this, you need to be active and persistent. So cheerleading is the best thing. I was put on the girls' team because of the plastic surgery, and our captain didn't hide the fact that my gorgeous breasts would have an effect. Well, for the sake of such a case, I agreed, but I didn't think that I would need to wear a certain uniform. I was given a short skirt and a crop top and invited to a rehearsal. As soon as I entered the hall, our boys started whistling, calling me Elia Tits and clapping their hands. Damn, I wanted to get out of there, but I set a clear goal and went with it. So I took all my will and started dancing. Our boys were often distracted from the game, watching my breasts jump. Sometimes they threw the ball in my direction and asked me to pick it up. I was maddened by the humiliation. Training turned into a nightmare, and I came home in a bad mood. My mother immediately noticed the tears and sat down to talk to me. I told her everything, and then my mother got up and led me to the bedroom. She showed me a photo when she was young, and I couldn't believe it was her. My mother had the same breasts as me. They were huge. My mother laughed a lot when she told me about them. I asked her how she coped with them, and my mother said that it was also awkward and difficult for her, but then she just accepted herself like this. By the way, your dad married me because of them, and you won't believe it, but everyone was jealous of him. It is now they are smaller and not as elastic and beautiful as yours, but women's breasts are very beautiful, she told me. My mother took another bra out of the closet, but it was open work black with wide straps, and she gave it to me. I also said that it would be much more comfortable for me, and it also made me feel different, more feminine. And you know, she was right. As soon as I tried it on, I saw a different side of myself and realized that I was beautiful. My participation in cheerleading will only get better. I straightened up and smiled at myself. The very next day, I came to school in new underwear and a beautiful blouse. I began to be perceived differently, as a lady, and not as a kid in sweatshirts. Now, all the training sessions I gathered an audience of boys from my class and others, and I felt like a queen. I realized that I should be proud of such a natural part of myself. Do you think it's beautiful or not? My mother, a tattoo artist, covered me with tattoos. Hello everyone, my name is Kaylee, Do any of you have a tattoo artist as a mom? I agree, this is generally rare, but I have one. And yes, she covered me with tattoos herself. How did this happen? Now I will tell you. All you have to do is like the video of my story. Do not forget to share it with your friends, write comments under the video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. So initially, my mother is an artist. She has always drawn beautifully, and she has a great talent that can be envied. She didn't really like studying at school, but she excelled at drawing lessons. She was even better than the teacher. She always drew wall newspapers, posters, in general, actively participated in the creative life of the school, for which she was given good grades. She then went to an art institute or something. My mom was the best there, and 2 years later, she met a guy named Chris. She fell in love with him at first sight, but her parents were against it. My mother trusted her heart, so despite the prohibitions and reproaches, they got married. And then I was born. Yes, these are my parents. My father was from a poor family, which is why my grandparents still do not accept him, although it has been a very long time. It was really hard for them. They didn't earn much, and they still had to study. Anyway, my dad dropped out of school and went looking for a job. He drew portraits to order, but this money was still not enough, so he decided to try doing tattoos. At first, this idea seemed dubious to my mother. Plus, you also had to pay to be trained. But they took a chance and Dad learned, and then gradually began to take orders. And things went well. After a few years, he worked in the best salon in the city, on a level with other professionals. And a few years later, he had his own tattoo studio. By this time, we were well on our feet. I grew up, went to school, and my mother, so as not to sit idle, also decided to go to work. She was looking for a job by her profession, as she had a diploma, but nothing good was found. And when she came out of the 30th unsuccessful interview, she came up with an interesting idea. Mom went to Dad's work, brought him lunch, and watched as he finished giving a tattoo to one of his clients. When Dad finished, he asked how her work was going. My mom sadly replied that she wasn't working, and then she was like, "Teach me how to do a tattoo." Dad almost choked on his food. This statement was very unexpected. He asked if she was sure that she wanted this, and my mother said a firm yes. From that moment on, they worked together. My father taught my mother. She practiced first on artificial leather, then began to gain a client base. Since my mother had talent, she also learned quickly. I was proud of them because they were able to stand on their own 2 feet and provide food for our family. When the school found out how my parents worked, the teachers were outraged, made unhappy faces, and the guys threw questions about whether she could get them tattoos and why I don't have any. I never thought about that before. I thought it was optional, even though my parents have tattoos. A few of them. I came home and immediately said that I wanted a tattoo. My mom and dad lost their minds. At first, they were indignant for a long time, but then they realized that they could not say no. You can understand why. Then my father said that he would allow me to get a tattoo with one condition, that it would be done either by him or by my mother. And I agreed. I was given until the weekend to choose a drawing and think about it properly, as well as to consult with my parents. All week I was racking my brain, choosing a large, then a small drawing. I could not decide. Then my mother came up to me. She advised me to make a small one, try to get used to it, to the sensations. To be honest, I was scared. Although my parents told me in detail how the process would take place, I was still worried, but it was normal. Then came Saturday. I went to the salon with my parents and asked my mother to make my first tattoo, and she agreed. They asked me again if I was ready and if I had made a conscious decision, and when they said yes, my mother invited me to sit down. In fact, I was more worried, and after 30 minutes, I had a tattoo of a small flower on my arm. It looked neat, unassuming, and I was pleased. It took about a week for the tattoo to heal. It itched, but I took good care of it. At first, I couldn't get enough of it. It's like when you buy yourself a cool new thing, only this is always with you. I often got questions from my friends. What if the tattoo gets boring? What to do then? In general, they can be taken off. But why? That is why my parents asked me if I was sure about the choice of the tattoo and if my decision was really consciously made. When everything was completely healed, the thought crept into my mind. What if I had more? My father and mother asked the same questions and invited me to the salon. This time I made a bigger drawing on my leg. I had a wolf's mouth all over my thigh. This drawing was in color, so I was worked on for several hours in a row, and not at once. My mother did a great job. She clearly displayed all the details, like she did with all her clients. In some places I was a little sore, but in general, the sensations were tolerable. Finally, when the work was completely finished, there was another drawing on my leg, and it looked just bomb. And the funny thing is that 6 months later, I thought about another tattoo. It became like an addiction. My father told me about it. Lots of his clients often come for him for new tattoos after getting one. So, in a total of 2 years, my mother gave me about 20 tattoos. My arms, legs, stomach, neck, and lower back were all clogged up. At school, my teachers told me off, but my parents stood up for me, and that was what I liked the most. Do I consider my body beautiful? Yes, but it also warms me to think that my mother did all this work for me. Isn't it wonderful? Now her work will always remain with me. Would you take a chance like this? What would you tattoo yourself with? Hi everyone, my name is Hannah, and my boyfriend thought I was ugly. Tell me, are there a lot of girls around here who were humiliated by their boyfriends? Give me a plus sign in the comments because I'm with you. And please write how he did it and what he was trying to achieve. I have a real-life story, and I need your support. It all started when I was 15. I met Paul when I was walking my grandmother's dog in the park, yawning, not because I was tired, but because I was terribly bored. I hadn't been in a relationship before, maybe because I wasn't pretty. I thought I was overweight, even though I'd been told my weight was normal. Well, hell. To weigh 50 kilograms at height 160 seemed to me not very. My belly hung, my nose stuck out, my skin was fat, so… Anyway, I walked that day in my usual image, as a pooch, there in sweatpants, hoodies, with a bob on my head. Then my dog got off the leash. Not a Chihuahua, but a whole Saint Bernard. Remember, in the movie Beethoven? Well, mine was just like that. Deke, that was the dog's name, ran towards some dude who was eating ice cream. That was the doggie's weakness. From the force of the jerk, I was pulled off my feet and fell to the ground. The dog dragged me a good 4 meters, and then I rolled on the floor to the guy, and Deke began to eat his ice cream. The guy was stunned, afraid to move, lying there drooling, and the dog ate the ice cream and sat down next to me. I stood up apologetically, but I read laughter in the guy's eyes. What? What's wrong? I wanted to apologize. I'm so embarrassed. You're hurt. Excuse me? Your clothes are torn. I put my head down and realized that my pants were ripped to shit. My Hello Kitty panties were sticking out. My knees were ripped and bleeding, and I was so dirty. Ugh! Deke, stupid dog! What have you done? I'm turning you into a shelter, you hear me? Okay, it happens. Here, take my sweatshirt. You can cover yourself with it. That's embarrassing. After what you've been through, I have to ask you out. What? Are you serious? It's not every day you meet a girl with Hello Kitty panties. I'm Paul, by the way. Hannah, nice to meet you. Paul walked me home. We caught the stares of passers-by the whole way. I gave my grandmother the dog and Paul walked me home. You know, it was so romantic. I felt like it couldn't get any more romantic. Then we were in a relationship. We went out a lot, talked about things. The first 6 months just flew by, and then came the first calls of my discomfort. I remember we were going on vacation with my girlfriends and their boyfriends. My friend Kat asked an interesting question at the time. Look, you guys have been together for over 6 months. Does your Paul have any friends then? Of course he does. Have you ever seen them in your life? Well, I know a lot about them and we say hi to each other. Through Paul, yeah. Don't you think that's weird? He hangs out with us all the time, but he hasn't introduced you to his friends yet. No, well, I hadn't thought of that. And you should have. My George introduced me to his friends in a week. and then his whole family within a month. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. What's the rush? I'm not telling you to get married. It's not normal. I'm fine. We're fine. Well, look, I was just asking. And this conversation did not leave me alone. I went to Paul's social network page, and only then did I notice that he didn't have any pictures of me. After the party, I unobtrusively asked him why he hadn't posted any pictures of me for so long. Paul said he would that day. So I decided to wait. The next day, I saw a picture of the two of us standing in an embrace. He behind me in front. Except my face didn't look like mine. What is this? The photo. Yes, but where am I? There. That's not me. Why have you photoshopped my face? That's a doll, not me. Well, there are your lips and your eyes, a little bit. You made me look prettier, my hair longer, even changed the shape of my nose. Just a little. I don't get it. Are you ashamed of me? No, I love you. You know that. It's just, it would be nice if you lost some weight, grew your hair, or started doing makeup. What's wrong with my face without makeup? I'm fine with it. I just want you to look better, you know? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. I know it's hard for you to accept right now, but you're the kind of girl that your mom didn't teach you how to take care of yourself. I have an older sister, and for as long as I can remember, she was always messing around with her image. That's the advantage to being a girl. You're saying I'm ugly? Yeah, but that's easy to fix. You have a beautiful inner soul. You're interesting. You just need some work on your looks. His words hurt me so much. I went home devastated, thinking that I was ugly. My nerves made me feel so bad that I walked around with a disgruntled face. Then we started fighting. And the last time we fought, Paul called me ugly again and dumped me. It shattered the shit out of my self-esteem. I had no idea what to do next. But after a few weeks of crying, I decided to lose weight. Only it just sort of worked itself out. I mean, I was so nervous, and I was constantly self-deprecating and crying. I hated my reflection in the mirror. I stopped eating, and in 2 months, I lost weight to 44 kilograms. I had no appetite, but my figure got better. My mom was really worried about me and even agreed to pay for makeup classes. I went to them, studied, and got some products. And yes, to be honest, the change did me good. I started to look really nice. Wow, who's calling? Finally remembered that you have friends? How many months have you been gone? You must have been hanging out with Paul, huh? No, he dumped me, like 3 months ago. What? And you didn't say anything? He's an asshole. He's gonna be sorry he lost you. That's not why I'm calling you. Thanks, but, it's Paul's friend Alan's birthday coming up. I told you about it? I don't remember, but whatever. So, it just so happens that we've been talking to him the whole time. He texted me for some reason, found me online, and he invited me. Paul's gonna be there, and I'm supposed to go. And you're supposed to look stunning? That's right, girlfriend. Well, then you've come to the right place. Kat picked me up, and we went to the biggest mall in town. It took us about 4 hours, no less, but before that, Kat showered me with compliments. She told me that I looked really thin and that I had great makeup on. That's what you've been doing all this time. I'm sorry, I should have called you. You needed a fucking friend. Oh no, you didn't need to. I'm not offended, especially since I cut myself off. I needed to process everything. You do look better now, but he had no right to call you names. You were right. He was embarrassed of me. That's why he didn't upload pictures. Then why was he with you? He was interested in me as a person, but not as a girlfriend. Guys don't know what they want. Don't feel bad. You have a good chance of taking him down at this party. Hit it. Kat helped me to get ready. I looked amazing in my new dress with my shoulders exposed. It was very slimming and fitted. Fancy shoes, a modest ponytail on my head, and light makeup. I looked irresistible. Kat drove me to Alan's house. I knocked on the door and he, inviting me in and asking what I'd like to drink. Soda, please, I said. Alan brought me a glass of soda a few minutes later. Before I could even get a good look at everyone, I was surrounded by guys. There were at least 6 of them. There was only one silhouette sitting on the couch, looking in my direction and not moving. A girl was standing next to Paul, and she was pretty. emotionally telling him something, but he wasn't listening. Our eyes met and we froze for a minute. And then Alan asked me to dance, and I said yes. He spun me around in the center of the room, and then Paul came up to us abruptly. He politely asked his friend to steal his dance partner. I glanced sideways at Paul's girlfriend. She stood angrily, grabbed her purse, and stormed out. Paul asked me to go outside with him where it was quieter. You look good. Thank you. It's been a long time. Yep. So, who invited you? Alan. Are you guys seeing each other? It's been 3 months. Wow. So, he's moving in with you? None of your business. Why? I'm curious. Look, Paul, did you take me out on the street to tell me something, or do you care more about what's going on between your friend and I? Both. Your jealousy of Alan is unwarranted. You dumped me, so we don't owe each other anything. I get it, yeah, but I can't be without you. When did you realize that? Right away. I didn't know how you'd take it. I know when you're lying. Don't you hate talking to a freak? I'm sorry, I was an idiot. I take it back. You're just pretty. I shouldn't have. And I'm not taking it back. We're over, Paul. It's over between us. I turned around and went back into Alan's house. How did that make me feel? I was ready to move mountains with a pain in my chest, but this was my revenge. Why didn't I take him back? Because the man doesn't love me. I'm not a person to him. I'm just a gamble. People like Paul only really love themselves, and they don't give a damn about your feelings. Well, what about Alan? A week after his birthday, we went on a date. And, this is a man who loves me without any conditions, even in sweatpants. Hello, everyone. I'm Joko. You'll think I'm just a normal teenager. I'm short with shoulder-length hair, but it looks weird when I'm going to work instead of school. Yes, you heard right. I work as a marketing manager for an advertising company, and for a long time. Do you want to know how it happened? I'll tell you all about it. You will be surprised to learn that I am, by the way, a valuable employee at work. I have many friends, acquaintances, and good colleagues. I am independent and provide for myself. You may ask, where are my parents? I left them for another city when I was 18 years old. Yes, you hear me right. Now you have a question in your head about how old I really am. I'm 30 now. Are you shocked? I'll tell you more. Not only are you in shock, but all the people around me. In general, actually it's kind of a family thing. On my mother's side, my grandmother doesn't look her age. Yes, even my mother. She is now 50 years old and looks 30. And she also has a tiny figure. She has gorgeous black hair, white teeth, all her own. She can't afford to wear fashionable, youthful things and looks just gorgeous. She and my dad are the same age, but he looks like her father. Some passers-by are even slightly perplexed when they kiss each other on the lips at parting. My mom says it's all about genetics. My dad is American and my mom is Japanese, and her wonderful genes were passed on to me. I grew up, by the way, like all ordinary babies. First I learned to sit, then stand, walk, and so on. And then, when I was 12 years old, my appearance seemed to freeze in place. So eventually, I turned 15, then 18, and I still looked like a teenager. My mother immediately noticed that I took after her. She warned me that in life, I will have some difficulties, so I should be prepared for this and carry my ID everywhere. I kissed my parents goodbye and left home when I went to college. It was located in a neighboring city, so I had to learn independence from that moment. So the difficulty started as soon as I arrived at the bus stop. The saleswoman asked me how old I was because she didn't want to sell me a ticket. I showed my ID as proof, but she looked at it for probably 15 minutes. My bus had already left during this time, and she still did not believe that the document was authentic. I was in a bad mood, but I was allowed to leave. I arrived at my dorm, and the same problems were waiting for me there. On the first couple of days at school, among the students, the teachers noticed me and asked where my mother was or whose sister I was. As soon as I told them my name, they believed I was covering for my older brother or sister. Sometimes it got to the point where they called my parents via video link with a director to prove my age and name. Absurd! I was starting to get really mad at the way I looked. 6 months later, my patience broke at the end when I went to the store to buy a laptop through a card. These 6 months, I saved money by honest work, making essays and practical tasks to order. I did a good job of creative work. I drew and wrote well. With this money, I decided to buy a better computer. But the seller thought that I stole the card from my mother and wouldn't take it. Because of the scandal and nerves, I was taken to the police station and my mother had to go to another city to get me out of prison. I despaired and did not know what to do. Then my mother opened her purse and showed me her makeup when we came to my dorm room. I didn't understand what it was for because I never wore makeup. But my mother said that's how she saved herself once, and she gave me a light makeup to make me look a little older. Then she took me shopping and we completely changed my wardrobe. We bought more classic things. All my sneakers had been replaced with shoes, torn jeans and trousers, and I changed my t-shirts for blouses. And now I was wearing elegant handbags. I now had to do styling and makeup every day. But you know what? It really helped me. At least I looked a couple of years older, not like a child. Of course, I was very tired of putting on a marathon every day, but I liked that I was perceived differently now. When I graduated from college and started looking for a job, my resume was also surprising because people couldn't believe that a 16 to 17-year-old girl had already graduated from college. I was called for an interview to personally look at me, and I explained to everyone what cool genes I have. In general, I was hired after all. And no, not because of my appearance, but because of my knowledge and skills. Sometimes I still hear colleagues chattering about my height, and on New Year's Day, they gave me a pacifier or a bottle of milk. But nevertheless, I know that this is kind. You know, looking young is great, and I can't wait to look like my mom. I think it's only at that point that it's a real compliment. A couple of months later, one of my colleagues came up to me at work and told me that she had a girlfriend. She is a photographer and is looking for models to advertise teen clothing. I already took the hint and flatly refused such an offer, but she persuaded me with fees. Yes, they paid very well, and I thought for a couple of minutes and agreed. After all, extra money never hurts. When I got to the studio, the staff were talking to me because I wasn't wearing makeup. The photographer herself knew the whole truth. She saw how awkward I was and immediately took the situation into her own hands. She asked her colleagues not to do this. I was given clothes, I tried them on, and they were just right for me. I looked just like a schoolgirl. After taking a few series of pictures, I was paid and went home. Within a week, the pictures were hanging on huge banners in the city. I was so angry. If I had known that the pictures would be hanging around the city, I would never have agreed, I shouted. My colleagues took selfies against the background of the advertisement and sent them to me. I felt like a real child. I got hysterical again and called my mother. Mom came to me with my favorite buns, which she baked. I ate them and cried. Mom, why do we have such a curse? I asked her, but she said that this is not a curse, but a gift. I didn't agree with her, but my mother explained that a person can buy everything except youth. Not many people have this kind of gift. I'm proud that we are special, my mother said, and I suddenly realized that this was true. We don't have to have facial plastic surgery, facelifts, and Botox just to remove wrinkles. I liked this idea, and from that moment, I accepted myself as I am. Well, life has become easier. As for the others, I've learned to hold out my middle finger held high. If you liked my story, please like it, write comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.